Hello and welcome to another entry into the Halo series, this time with the Inter-quel side story title, Halo 3 ODST. I'll be using the Master Chief Collection on Steam for this video, and since this Halo title is probably the one I'm least familiar with, I can't say for sure if the soundtrack or graphics are close to the original release. After the events of Halo 3, I wasn't expecting more Halo titles since 3 concluded so much of the series at the time. There were some additions like Halo Legends that spanned a bit of the universe, and I didn't know game news very well at the time. ODST is also the game I went to for my first midnight release as well, and showed the series didn't need to rely on Master Chief to tell a good story, with some exceptions. I didn't see many ads for ODST aside from the occasional Game Informer ads and probably on YouTube, which they still got me excited enough to buy ODST almost immediately. Being a Halo title also helped encourage me to buy it. So, let's prepare to drop Shot the Covenant at night and delve into mystery and see just how good Halo 3 ODST is. When ODST came out, I was well into middle school and all the responsibilities that came with it at the time, and the time I had to play games was limited. The Xbox 360 was in full swing, and games were absolutely cooking in that generation, and having ODST come out during the same generation was mind-blowing since many Halo games released during that generation. We had Halo 3, ODST, Halo Reach, and Halo Wars, though I wasn't expecting how the game would turn out. I came up with my own various theories of how the game would play. I wasn't very familiar with side story games either. The most notable series I can think of off the top of my head was the Kingdom Hearts series, which not only had various spin-offs, it was also a series that spanned multiple consoles for a good amount of years. So when I finally got my hands on ODST and started playing the campaign for the first time, I was absolutely, unequivocally, positively disappointed.
Must wash away the sin.
Yeah, I know, I can't explain exactly why, but I was disappointed with ODST. The story focused on the fan favorite ODSTs, UNSC troops that are highly trained and well-armed humans with next-to-no modifications like the Spartans, and was heavily expanded compared to 3 having not 1 or 2 characters playing as, but 5, that would show their different perspectives and personalities with the troopers. And I wasn't very familiar with the ODSTs. To be fair, I wasn't really familiar with a lot of the Halo universe at the time. I had just been introduced to the idea of the Spartan 3s, so I thought the ODSTs seemed a little bit of a step back. I know a little bit better now. The gameplay was also tweaked, and I'm pretty sure my issues stemmed from here and ODST was notably tougher than Halo 3. So how did ODST come to be? From what I could find was that between the gap between Halo Reach and Halo 3, there were plans for a game called Halo Chronicles. It was to be a joint project with Peter Jackson of Lord of the Rings, notably, and was in development until its cancellation in around 2009. Supposedly, it'd be an episodic story-driven game that would have introduced the Prometheans into the series. Those were the enemies from Halo 4. Alongside a Halo film that also got shelved with the two projects joined at the hip, supposedly. So when one fell through, the other followed. Rather than scrap everything that had been built up to that point, Bungie had made an entire engine for Chronicles, apparently. Bungie went ahead and began conceptualizing the Halo ODST of today. To make it even crazier is that supposedly ODST started development in 2008 with the 2009 release, which is nuts with how well it did turn out. Despite its short dev cycle, ODST got some massive marketing push. Most notably was the live-action trailer called The Life that showcased the ODST in combat and is a really good trailer. I highly recommend watching it. ODST was also a fairly successful launch that was almost on par with Halo 2's release, with similar units sold and money made. It wasn't as good as Halo 3's release, but for a game that was recouped, developed quickly, and shipped quickly is very impressive. Most points of contention I saw spanned from ODST's short campaign. It averages about 6 hours for the whole campaign, and lacked many features that 3 had in the bots, and also wouldn't get any post-launch support DLCs, which made that $60 price point seem a little bit iffy. But if I compare to games nowadays at $70 fucking dollars,
$70? $70 fucking dollars?
with bare bones content compared to ODST, I could see ODST being worth it. ODST hasn't received a remaster on par with 1 and 2, and honestly, that's not a bad thing. It still holds up 15 years after release. What also makes ODST stand out is the approach to characters. Aside from Rookie, the troopers talk, and they are a delight to see and hear in action. They all play the same, so it's their own personalities that help them stand out and give an idea on how regular UNSC, when compared to Master Chief, react to a Covenant attack. Buck is a smart ass but tough as nails. Dutch is a gruff badass. Mickey is a bit cowardly but knows how to get the job done. And Romeo is a team player that looks after his fellow teammate. Each of the troopers' personalities are shown in the campaign in many ways, making the ODST campaign really hold up, especially compared to the older Halo titles. ODST isn't my favorite Halo. This is probably my second time playing through the campaign, and it surprised me with how good it was. The performances were stellar, and set pieces didn't overstay their welcome, and the setting was intriguing to play through. The fact that Bungie took everything that was built for another project, took that cancelled project framework, and turned it into a decent side game, that is something to be commended. And though I didn't play the ODST multiplayer that much, it was fun for a while, and I can get more into that. So let's get into the gameplay and immersion. And while Halo 3 was pretty stuffed, ODST is a more streamlined back to basics experience, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
What are you, Joel Silver? Kaboom, dude! Oh, shut up, idiot. Kaboom!
Unlike the previous games, Master Chief or Arbiter aren't playable in ODST. Instead, a majority of ODST is playing newly brought on Trooper, the Rookie, and with return of the 4-player online multiplayer from 3 alongside 2-player couch co-op. Aside from slight cosmetic and audio differences with the troopers, their gameplay is the same. The biggest difference between 3 and ODST is definitely the gameplay. Unlike previous games, the ODST have no traditional shield system like Spartans. Instead, it's listening to audio cues and paying more attention to stamina alongside the returning health bar in ODST, and there's no motion tracker. So what's integral to surviving the more aggressive enemies is really paying attention to all the cues while navigating the ruined city of New Mombasa for a majority of the campaign. Another feature is that the ODST can carry up to 3 of each grenade type. In Halo 3, it was only 2 per type, with grenades having more of an arc to the throws now, so you have to aim a little bit better. The most notable thing that you, the viewer, probably noticed is how weapons work. After ODST, dual-wielding weapons was cut. I don't wholly recall why this was done. I seem to remember reading in an interview that Bungie decided this direction due to balancing issues in PvP. Whether that's true or not, I can't say for sure, but if I do find anything corroborating it, I'll put an image somewhere here. Along with no more dual wielding is some gutted and added weapons for the campaign. For example, the battle rifle isn't in ODST's campaign. The SMG standard isn't here, being replaced with a silenced variant, and from what I can tell, the standard plasma rifle isn't in the campaign, instead is the red root variant, and no energy sword from what I could see. They're not that big of an absence in the campaign, don't worry, and they are in the game, they're just in the multiplayer. Most of 3's weapons are in ODST's campaign and are still effective. It just requires a little more thought to combat approaches that reminded me a bit of Combat Evolved, especially since the troopers aren't like Chief in their movement. They're noticeably slower and can't jump as high, so playing it as them requires a different approach. This is further accentuated with how Mombasa is very open with doors and buildings that can be used for cover against the Covenant, and using the environment more often makes combat against the Covenant a lot easier since their AI seem to get a buff between games. Unless you're like me and decide to brute force through enemies with mixed success half of the time. While playing ODST as the rookie are also these audio laws that depict some of the events that happened off-screen in ODST. They're not really important to the story, it's just something neat to find for more flavor text. Also back are equipment from Halo 3, which the troopers cannot use. They're only delegated to the Covenant. Instead, the X button that deployed equipment has a different function in ODST. The VISR, or Visor for simplicity, a HUD feature for the ODST that allows a user to see in dark areas without difficulty, similar to night vision, and highlight enemies and even show invisible enemy silhouettes while in use. The visor is probably the most used feature of ODST because if it wasn't too obvious, ODST's Mombasa streets are very dark, being very hard to see in most cases without the visor. And also similar to night vision, visor doesn't work very well in the day. ODST also has a similar roster to 3 with the elites not being part of the Covenant forces with brutes replacing them, because ODST is technically an Inter-quel for Halos 2 and 3. And there's a new enemy type called Engineers. Originally they were in the books apparently, and they debuted here in the game. They provide enhanced shields to enemies and float around the area like armored jellyfish, and also happen to be enslaved by the Covenant, which isn't known until much later after destroying a few of them. Buck, what do you have to say to that?
I've seen hundreds of these things today. Why is this one so important?
This engineer knows what the Covenant's after. If I could safely capture more of them, I would. You haven't killed any of them, have you?
No. Well, maybe one or two.
What an asshole!
Aside from the Engineers, the Covenant roster is roughly the same as Halo 3's. Then there's the multiplayer of ODST, which brought the newly introduced mode called Firefight. Firefight is pretty much Halo's take on Horde modes that gives some customization in some of the variables and takes place on maps that appear in the campaign. This mode would get further expanded in Halo Reach and Halo Master Chief Collection, and that's everything ODST added for multiplayer, is what I would say if I didn't have the game myself at the time. ODST had this other disc that came with every copy that included Halo 3 multiplayer with all of the DLC that had released at that point in time. This is what made ODST worth it in my opinion, especially since each DLC pack was about $10 each, making that $60 price tag a bit less of a hard pill to swallow. I also couldn't forget the music in ODST. It may sound familiar to Halo Reach, but when walking around the Mombasa streets and the track playing is so good, even just standing there and just listening to it and vibing to it. I highly recommend going out to find and listen to it. ODST also did not receive any post-release support like DLC, like I said earlier. If I had to guess, just my personal guess, speculation, it was probably so Bungie could focus on Halo Reach. It may seem like ODST was a lesser Halo, and in some ways it was, since it mainly filled in that big gap for Halo Reach, which also got promoted alongside it. ODST did something different than previous games and showed more of the Halo universe, and is something I can definitely appreciate more, especially with how the series is a bit all over the place these days. It's not my favorite campaign or a Halo that I go back to play with friends, but that campaign makes it worth experiencing some great storytelling from Bungie. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into this story.
Halo 3 ODST, it's a whole new story, it's a whole new campaign. It has new characters. It's not about the Master Chief this time. It's about the Orbital Drop Shock Troopers. That's their acronym that's in the name. They're kind of like Navy SEALs. They drop in from outer space. They go into hot zones and they take care of business on the ground. They're not superheroes in the same way the Master Chief is, but they're very dedicated, very specialist, and very dangerous soldiers.
Since this is the story for ODST, I will provide a timestamp to skip the spoilers and wait a little bit. The story of ODST begins with a text scroll that summarizes some of the broader strokes that have led up to this particular point, including the fact that the UNSC and Earth forces are losing. The story of ODST proper follows Alpha 9, or the Squad, led by Buck. Their mission: to board the Prophet of Regret's ship and do their stuff. Do what they do. Do their voodoo. They didn't really describe it very well. Before they can do so, while in drop, ONI officer Dare tells the squad that their mission has changed to security intelligence from the superintendent AI of the city. Before the squad even makes landfall, the Prophet ship does the slip space jump from Halo 2, knocking out all electronics and the squad's pod off course. The story then follows new recruit Rookie as he investigates the heavily Covenant-occupied streets of New Mombasa to track and reconnect with the team. While doing his investigations are cutaways to the various perspectives of the squad, with their attempts to find each other while helping Mombasa resistance against the Covenant, and trying to find Dare, who's seemingly KIA for a good portion of the game. The squad eventually get transport out of New Mombasa when at the same time Rookie tracks down Dare and delves into the depths of Mombasa to help her find the superintendent VRGL, or Virgil, and that AI is now inside an engineer which must be protected at all costs. Buck is able to figure out where Dare and Rookie are, luckily, and with the three of them and Virgil, they fight their way out and escape the city before they get caught in the Covenant glassing the entire city, showing the eventual portal that Halo 3 proper would explore. After the credits, it shows Johnson finding out about Virgil and attempting to talk to it and getting more information for the war. And that plot doesn't really go anywhere, with that being ODST ending. Halo 3 ODST, when it comes to its campaign, is much better than I remember it. This was my second time playing the campaign, at least I'm pretty sure. And I have to say that it has aged far better than I thought it would. When I first got ODST, I didn't really vibe with it. I think it was because it was so different to Halo 3, which is one of my favorite Halos of all time. It had no dual wielding in it, no shield mechanic, felt a bit slower compared to playing as Chief, and lacked features in areas being some of what I distinctly remember not liking at the time. I have to say that for a title that was a filler for Halo Reach, at least if I don't include Halo Wars, ODST is much better than it probably should have been with how it came to be in its dev cycle. ODST may not have done as well as Halo 3, but it still did very well for an experiment. The gameplay The characters, the setting, and music are massive contributors to a solid game like ODST. It's as polished as Halo 3 was in a lot of areas, while expanding and pulling back in its experience that gives ODST a bit more of its own identity, and not just, oh, it's Halo, but with ODST. And it showed that Bungie was at the time willing to experiment with its IP and came up with one of the better stories they made for their run at the time. And after a long time between playing ODST, I can honestly say I've grown to like it a lot more for what it is, and not what I wanted it to be. Before leaving some sellout stuff, leave a comment, a like, or even subscribe for more content similar to this. Is Halo 3 ODST actually a good entry? Is Halo 3 ODST an experiment that was successful, or am I just being biased? Was it a step in the right direction for the series and gameplay? I sincerely hope I showed or explained just how good Halo 3 ODST is. Now join me with the final scene of the campaign and close out on this wild ride.
Easy does it.
We went through hell for that?
Give him some meds, would you? It's important. It knows things.
Heck, Gunny. I wasn't talking about the alien.
Mickey, I'm sending you a very special co-pilot.
Oh, come on! I don't want one of those things in here!
It won't bite, and unlike you, it knows what to tell those cruisers to keep them off our tail.
I think they're too busy to care. Looks like they found what they're looking for.
What about you? What about us?
Win this war? Then ask me that again.